love it when we dive deep into Yellowstone, and today we're going all in on 1923. Season 2, baby! We've got intel, YouTube theories, those little whispers from the set. You name it, we're unpacking it all.
Let's do this.
Okay, so 2024, kind of a Yellowstone drought, wouldn't you say? But that just makes 1923 the oasis we are all parched for. And let's be real, the rumors are already flying.
It's true, the anticipation is already through the roof, especially now that we know those other Yellowstone spin-offs have been pushed back even further.
Exactly. Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's do a quick production roundup. Filming for 1923 finally picked back up in July, right? After all those delays. And get this, they're going back to Montana in October for some of those iconic shots.
And you know what they say? Authenticity doesn't come cheap. Word on the street is, Season 1 cost a cool $35 million per episode.
Wait, $35 million each episode? I know we were all blown away by Season 1, but wow. Just imagine what Sheridan's got up his sleeve if he's willing to hit pause for that long to get it right.
Shows a real commitment to the vision. And while we're talking about vision, let's talk about this cliffhanger. Spencer, on that ship. Alexandra, back at the ranch. I mean, where do we even begin?
Right, it's like Sheridan reached right through the screen and ripped our hearts out. So, from what we've gathered, it sounds like Spencer's journey back to Montana in Season 2 is gonna be, how do I put this? Intense, to say the least. And more than a little reminiscent of his father's journey in 1883, wouldn't you say?
It's classic Sheridan, though, right? Put them through the ringer, see what they're made of. But I do wonder if he's intentionally mirroring those father-son journeys. You know, is it about how trauma echoes through generations? Like, is Spencer destined to be just as haunted as his ancestors?
Oh, okay, now that's an interesting thought. And speaking of haunted, some sources are saying that Alexandra might be headed for a tragic end.
That would be a bold move, even for Sheridan. But just imagine the emotional impact, the ripple effect it would have on Spencer, on the entire family. We already know this world is brutal, but that would just take it to a whole new level.
For sure. And we can't forget about Jacob either. That attack at the end of Season 1. Well, let's just say his future is up in the air.
Absolutely. And that leaves this huge question mark hanging over the whole power dynamic at the ranch. If Jacob's out of the picture, who steps up?
Well, the rumor mill says that Kara might find herself in a more prominent role, which, honestly, I am here for it.
100%. Kara's a force of nature, even without a right hand.
Don't forget that death glare. But as much as we might want to see Kara take charge, let's not forget about Donald Whitfield. That guy is a constant thorn in the Dutton side, and it sounds like he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
It all plays into that bigger theme Sheridan loves to explore there, doesn't it? That clash between the old and the new. Those traditional ways of life going head to head with the relentless march of progress. Almost like a microcosm of what was happening in the American West back then, wouldn't you say?
Totally. You've got the Duttons clinging to their land, their legacy, and then you have these opportunistic newcomers, often flush with cash from back east, seeing nothing but dollar signs in the vastness of the West.
And let's be real, those tensions didn't always resolve peacefully. Makes you wonder how much of that historical reality Sheridan's going to weave into Season 2.
Ooh, for sure. Especially since his stories tend to resonate with what's happening today, even if they are set a century in the past. But, okay, we can't talk about impactful storylines without mentioning Tiana. Season 1 gave us a glimpse into the horrors of those Native American boarding schools, and it was rough. A stark reminder of a really dark chapter in our history that often gets overlooked.
Absolutely. And what makes her story even more compelling is that it could be where 1923 goes from being this gripping period drama to something much more profound, like a real gut-punch commentary on the generational trauma inflicted on Indigenous communities.
Right. Some sources are even saying her story might intersect with the Rainwater family from Yellowstone. It would add this whole other layer of complexity to those historical land disputes.
That would be incredibly powerful. Imagine exploring those injustices, not just as something that happened in the past, but as issues that still resonate, still have an impact today.
Okay, but there's one thing we haven't even touched on. I'm talking about new characters, because it wouldn't be a Taylor Sheridan show without some fresh faces, right?
He does like to shake things up. And word on the range is that we're in for both new allies and new villains in Season 2.
Oh man, I can't wait. And knowing Sheridan, these aren't just going to be random cowboys or damsels in distress. He's going to give us characters that make us question everything. Characters who blur the lines between good and bad.
Right. So the big question is, what kind of wrench is he going to throw into this world to get us all talking? What kind of characters would really turn up the heat in the world of 1923?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. So, to answer that, we need to think about the historical context, right? We're talking about the 1920s here, the Roaring Twenties. Prohibition is in full swing. Jazz is sweeping the nation. There's this underlying sense of social upheaval. What if? What if Sheridan throws us a curveball and introduces characters tied to, like, the criminal underworld? We've got bootleggers running around, gangsters, maybe even someone connected to the whole Hollywood scene, which was just starting to explode back then. Talk about a culture clash.
Oh, now that you mention it, seeing those worlds collide would be something else. On one hand, you've got the Duttons, representing this old way of life tradition, land ownership, that whole thing. And then suddenly, they're up against these forces of modernity, people operating outside the law who aren't afraid to, use a little muscle to get what they want.
It'd be like watching this slow-motion train wreck. And Sheridan is a master at building that kind of tension.
Oh, absolutely. But don't forget, he also loves to flip the script on us. What if these new characters aren't just, like, straight-up bad guys? What if some of them make us question our own ideas about right and wrong, loyalty, all of it?
Okay, now you're really making me think. Could we see someone come in who seems totally harmless, even sympathetic at first, but then, bam, they end up being even more dangerous to the Duttons than anyone could have predicted? Someone who sees their weaknesses, their soft spots, and knows exactly how to use those against them.
Exactly. Someone who gets how the family works, their whole MO, and uses that knowledge as a weapon. I mean, would it even be a Sheridan show without a healthy dose of moral ambiguity?
Right. That's what makes his character so fascinating. You never know who to root for. And even the so-called bad guys have these moments where you almost feel for them.
For sure. And don't forget the way Sheridan uses the visuals to tell these stories. Think about those sweeping shots of the Montana landscape, the way he captures how beautiful it is, but also how brutal it can be. It's almost like the land itself is another character in the story.
Absolutely. It just adds to the whole atmosphere, that sense of being isolated, exposed to the elements. And I don't just mean the weather, if you know what I mean.
Precisely. It's like the land itself is testing them, pushing everyone to their limits, and showing us who they really are.
Yeah.
And speaking of showing who they really are, how do you think Sheridan's signature style, that gritty realism, those heart-stopping moments of violence, will play out in Season 2? Do you think he'll dial it up? Or do you think he'll pull a total 180 and surprise us?
Man, that's the million-dollar question, right? Part of me thinks he's going to stick to his guns, give us that raw, unfiltered look at life on the frontier where danger is always right around the corner and survival is never a guarantee. But then again, Sheridan has a way of keeping us guessing.
He does. Okay, let's play a game. If you had to pick just one of Sheridan's trademarks that you think will be front and center in Season 2, what would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. But if I had to choose, I'd say it's his ability to create these characters who are so morally complex, you can't just put them in a box and slap a label on them. We saw that with Jacob and Kara, definitely. But I think he's going to take it even further in Season 2.
I can see that, especially given the time period, right? The Roaring Twenties were this time of massive social and cultural change. Traditional values were being thrown out the window, new ways of thinking were popping up everywhere, and people were trying to figure out life after a world war. It's like the perfect setting to really dig into those gray areas of human nature.
Absolutely. Plus, we can't forget, this is a show about legacy. It's about how the sins of the fathers play out with their children, and how history always seems to find a way to shape the present.
Ooh, I like that connection you're making. Because it really makes you wonder how much of what we're seeing in 1923 is actually a reflection of our own time.
Right. Like, are we really so different from the people who came before us? Are we still wrestling with those same big questions about power, who we are, what it means to belong?
Big questions, for sure. But honestly, I think that's why we keep coming back to these kinds of stories. They give us this lens to look at our own lives, our own world. They make us think, make us feel, maybe even question what we think is true.
100%. And speaking of questioning what we think we know, let's circle back to those new characters for a minute. We talked about them being tied to organized crime, but what about other angles?
Oh, you're right. There's a whole world of possibilities out there besides gangsters and bootleggers.
Yeah.
What if we see the women's suffrage movement? Or the rise of labor unions?
Yes. Imagine a character who shows up at the Yellowstone and starts advocating for the ranch hands, challenging the whole power structure between them and the Duttons.
That would be so timely, especially with everything going on today.
Yeah.
All the conversations about workers' rights and the gap between the rich and the poor. Sheridan's really good at taking those anxieties we have now and weaving them into these historical stories.
It's what makes his work feel so relevant, so real, even though it's set 100 years ago.
Exactly. But it's not just about the big picture. It's about those small, intimate moments, those human connections that Sheridan writes so well.
Oh, 100%. It's those moments of vulnerability, those glimpses of the people beneath the Stetsons and the dresses that really draw you in.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, 1923 is a story about family. Those bonds that hold us together, the secrets we keep, and how far we'll go to protect the ones we love.
Even if it means maybe getting our hands a little dirty.
Especially then. And let's be real, diplomacy isn't exactly the Dutton family motto.
True that. But that's kind of what we love about them, right? They're flawed, they're complicated, but their loyalty runs deep.
And we wouldn't have it any other way. But we've been throwing around a lot of theories about these new characters, these potential storylines. We haven't even really touched on the characters we already know. What are you most excited to see happen with Spencer, Alexandra, the rest of the Duttons?
Ugh, where do I even begin? Honestly, I'm dying to know if Spencer and Alexandra find their way back to each other. Like, that whole storyline has me on pins and needles. Will they reunite? Will it be this impossible, against all odds kind of thing? And even if they do, what will that even look like after everything they went through in season 1?
Right, it's the ultimate test. Can their love survive not just the distance, the danger, but the weight of this whole legacy that's bearing down on them?
And let's not forget about Jacob. Is he actually going to pull through? And if he does, what does that even mean for the future of the Yellowstone? Will he even be the same man he was? Or will this whole thing change him? For better or worse, who knows?
Hard to imagine him coming out of this unchanged, right? I mean, he stared death in the face.
Yeah.
And you know what they say about near-death experiences really makes you reevaluate things.
Totally. And how's Kara going to handle all of this? Will she be content to just fade back into the woodwork if and when Jacob recovers? Or did she get a little taste of power that she's not so eager to give up?
Ooh, now you're making me think about those classic power struggles. We've already seen those glimmers of ambition in Kara, but I have a feeling Sheridan's got something truly epic planned for her.
And while we're talking about epic, we cannot forget about Donald Whitfield. That man is like a snake in the grass, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike.
He's playing the long game, isn't he? Biding his time, gathering his resources, slowly but surely tightening his grip on the Duttons. Almost Machiavellian the way he operates.
Totally. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty, but he's also incredibly smart cunning. He's that villain you love to hate, but you gotta respect his ruthlessness,
Absolutely. And honestly, that's what makes Sheridan's writing so good.
Yeah.
He doesn't give us those cookie-cutter bad guys. Even the characters who seem completely bad have these layers to them. They have their reasons, their complexities.
So true. Okay, we've thrown out a ton of theories today. What are you really hoping to see in season 2?
I have a soft spot for those quiet moments, those scenes where the characters are really wrestling with their inner demons. I want to see what makes them pick, what drives them to make the choices they make, even the bad ones.
Love that. For me, it's got to be those twists and turns. I want to be shocked, surprised, on the edge of my seat the entire time. Sheridan is the king of those moments that leave you speechless, jaw on the floor.
He sure knows how to keep us talking. But even with all the drama, the intrigue, the action, at its heart, 1923 is a story about something we can all relate to.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think that is?
Survival. Plain and simple. It's about how far we'll go to protect what's our family, our homes, our values, everything that matters.
That is so true. And it's something that resonates no matter what. No matter what time period, what culture, what generation you come from, it's a universal truth.
Exactly. It's a timeless theme. And honestly, I think that's why 1923, and really the whole Yellowstone world, has struck such a nerve with people.
Because even though it's set in this specific time and place, it speaks to something much deeper, something inside all of us.
Exactly. It reminds us that the past never really stays buried, and that the decisions we're making right now will have consequences for years, maybe even generations to come.
Wow. What a thought. I don't know about you, but I am way too excited for season 2 now. The wait is going to be brutal.
Tell me about it. But I have a feeling it's going to be worth it.
It always is with Taylor Sheridan. And you know what? I'm calling it now. We're going to be right back here a year from now, dissecting every single detail when it finally premieres.
Count on it. But until then, keep those theories coming, folks.
Yes. Head over to our socials and let us know what you think Sheridan's got planned for the Duttons. We want to hear it all.